Hello lovely people, how are you all doing today? I do hope you're well. I'm well, if a little warm and ruddy of cheek. Oh my goodness, I am kicking myself. I've been putting, like most people, I've been putting the heating on for an hour a day. I put it on in the morning because when I get up it's about 14 degrees in here when I get up, which is, quick maths, 28, about 58 Fahrenheit. Which for me, I just don't like it. So I pop the heating on for an hour, bring it up to about 16 or so, with my thermals on, I'm great. I'm all set for the day. And obviously as the day wears on, I get a bit more active. So I've had a really kind of slightly bonkers morning. I've been out, I've been running around a bit. I left my phone at home. Now on my phone, I put an alarm, a timer of 1 hour for the heating. I left my phone at home, I didn't hear the alarm go off. So firstly, I've flattened the battery on my phone because it's been alarming for about 3 hours. And now I'm too warm, oh my goodness. Well, anyway, I'm gonna relax and make the most of it. Okay, so it's gonna be a bit of a chatty one today. There's some books coming up which I can't wait to share with you, and some other bits and pieces. And I just wanted to say very quickly, generally through the winter the videos are going to tend to be chatty videos, just me sitting here talking about what's going on, what I'm liking, what I'm loving, what have you, little incidents that occur to me in the high street, that sort of thing. And I know a lot of you really enjoy that, so thank you. It's the nature of gardening is that there's not a lot goes on in the winter anyway, or what goes on in the winter tends to be quite boring and repetitive. So there's less gardening videos anyway, but also this year, I think there's just going to be less gardening videos full stop, because I'm trying to minimise the amount of time that I spend on the garden in order to give myself more time for, you know, things like finding a new home. Anyway, I'm just mentioning that because a couple of people have messaged me, a couple of people have actually unsubscribed, that's fine. They're fed up with me not doing any gardening. It's like, well, this isn't a gardening channel. Anyway, good. I like to get the housekeeping out of the way first. Now, oh my goodness, this is quite a big topic. I may end up going around the houses a little bit, but I've got some bits and bobs of props next to me to remind me to come back on track. So, a question I get asked quite a lot, and it was asked again recently by Sarah. Hello Sarah. Sarah is a fellow nurse. Well, I'm not a nurse anymore. Sarah is a nurse. I think she's about my age. And she was asking me, do you not miss going to concerts, going to the cinema, going to restaurants, going out for coffee with your friends, etc., etc.? And I could honestly say, no, I don't miss that, because there's so much else that I have going on in life, in my life. I don't miss it. However, there are a few things I do miss, and I've been reflecting on this loads in the last, I don't know what the date is today, I think it's about the 9th of January or something like that, maybe even the 10th, it might be the 11th, I don't know. Anyway, I've been reflecting on it quite a lot, because it sort of started with that Murakami book that I took off the shelf. I think I read that on Boxing Day, so the 26th, possibly the 27th of December. So this stuff's been going around and round in my head a lot. And it was partly the subject matter of the book, the running. I miss running. But what really prompted all this thinking I've been doing, that I'm going to try and disseminate and make some kind of sense of out loud with you all, is it was published in 2009 and I bought it brand new. Quite rare for me to buy a brand new book, even when I was working. It was rare for me to buy a brand new book. But anyway, I was dying to get my hands on it. I got my hands on it. And then it sat on my shelf unread for 13 and a half years. So why? And I alluded to this in the video when I was talking about it, saying that it got put on the shelf and never picked up again because my life changed. And excuse me, and that's what I'm kind of going to explore a little bit in the first part of this video. And it might seem a bit miserable. It's not meant to be miserable. It's not miserable at all because I'm addressing it now, as in doing things to address it. So the thing is, in 2009, that's when I started my nursing degree. So I know that a lot of people, they know that I left when I started this new life that I have now, it's because I left nursing because my knees were shot and I couldn't do the job anymore. So I think a lot of people have it in their head that, oh, Vivi's a nurse or Vivi was a nurse. But actually it only covers 8 years of my life, that's about 1/7 of my life so far. It's only a small chunk of time, really. But in a way, it was the biggest change, the biggest topsy-turviness, the biggest upset. By far the biggest change in my life ever. And what I've been reflecting on in the last few days, last couple of weeks, is that I don't think it was the best change for me. So, and like I said, I don't mean this to be miserable because I'm fetching myself out of that. But the fact was, when I went into nursing, when I started to do the degree, a nursing degree is not like, say, if you're reading history or reading English or medieval literature or economics, PPE, whatever it is. It's a very different degree because it doesn't adhere to those quite short 3 terms that we have, the Michaelmas, the Lent, the Easter terms, the long summer holiday where you're not back in uni until the 4th, 5th of October or whatever it is. It's the equivalent of doing a full-time job in terms of the hours, and the holidays match up with full-time work, plus on top of that study. So you've got your full-time hours in practice, and then when you're not in practice, you're at uni, but on top of all of that, you're doing study. So I would say generally throughout the 3 years, I was doing an 80-hour week. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that is not a pity party and not a, oh, congratulations, pat on the back for you, because it's what everyone does. It's the fact that with such hours, it's impossible to do a part-time job. There's no way I could do a part-time job. Also, because my commute to and from uni, that was 3 hours of my day taken up just on buses. So no chance of doing a part-time job, which meant no income for 3 years, which meant I had to take out a massive loan. I ended up with £30,000 of loan in order to just pay my bills and tide me over, because at that time I still had my mortgage. So in the lead up to starting at uni, I basically stopped doing everything. Just literally all other parts of my life stopped, so that I could focus on my degree. And then even when I started working, I was one of a small group. There were 21 of us who were part of a special program. So we're working, but we're being fast-tracked to do our masters. And so even when I started working, I was still studying. But when I started working, so I started at Great Ormond Street in 2012. So I was only there 5 years, that's what I mean. People talk about, oh, your NHS pension. No, because for the first 3 years I was at work, I wasn't paying into the pension because I was paying off my student debt. Anyway, by the time I came to working, literally all I was doing alongside work was the garden and Auntie Teapot. So for a chunk of time, for that chunk of 8 years, I had literally nothing in my life apart from this incredibly narrow focus of studying to be a nurse, training to be a nurse, and getting that bit done. And then the 2 bits I added in, Auntie Teapot and the garden. And this is why this is what I've been reflecting on a lot since getting that book off the shelf. That point in 2009 where I had to, for instance, I used to go riding every Saturday. So any of you who, I know a lot of you are in South East London, will know the stables at Dulwich. I used to ride there every Saturday morning. So I had to quit that straight away because A, I didn't have the money to pay for my riding lessons anymore, and B, I didn't have the time to actually do it. So that went, reading for pleasure, that was out of the window because all my reading now was textbooks and journals and reports and all, evidence and all that kind of stuff. Going out, forget it. Can't afford to go out, didn't have the time to go out. So all these things, and pardon me, what I've been thinking, so I'm still on the old honey and lemon. I don't feel ill with anything, I just like my honey and lemon. But it just momentarily made me a bit burpy. Yeah, it's almost as if, and this is, I was trying to visualise it so I can cement it in my head and move on from all this thinking. It's almost like if this room was my life in the 2000s, it would be full of people, it would be partying, it would be art, it would be books, it would be artists, musicians, it would be kind of noisy, chaotic, rambunctious, just things happening all the time, running, the dog, all my friends, and it's almost as if in 2009 what I did was I walked to the front door, turned around, I turned the light off, I shut the door, I locked it and I threw away the key. That was it. Life over as I knew it. And that's been tough to think about in the last few days because I did love my job. I loved the kids. I loved working with the kids, loved the families. I was good at it. I enjoyed the responsibility. But when I now I'm sitting here thinking, but at what cost? What was the cost? My sleeping patterns are wrecked. They still haven't adjusted back. I think my sleeping is wrecked forever. My knees are wrecked. And all those other parts of my life that I gave up for it, that I haven't got back. Now, the thing with, say, running, I'm not going to get that back just because the knees have deteriorated too much. But yeah, it is weird. It does feel like that moment in 2009 was a watershed. I had one life before it, and then after 2009, it's a completely different life. It's almost unrecognisable. And I feel a little bit sad that the person that I was seems to have gone. And I liked that person. I liked the me in the 90s and in the noughties. That's not to say I don't like myself now, I'm fine. But yeah, it's a bit of a tough one. I'm sort of coming to terms with it. And I think part of so I feel at the moment, I feel a little bit, I'm like a sort of a dandelion seed head that's being tossed and blown in the wind, or like any of you who are into whitewater kayaking or canoeing will know about stoppers. So if you come over a bit of a lip of a rock and the water comes down, but then it's turning back on itself in that eddy. I feel like I'm stuck in an eddy at the moment, in that I'm not really going forwards, but I can't go backwards either. So I can't go back to 2009. I can't go back to that life. So much of it is gone. Are there parts of that life that I can go back and grab and bring into this? That's what I'm working on. But I think a lot of my sort of discombobulation at the moment, and that feeling of being that seed tossed in the air or whatever, is because I'm going to be moving this year. And I don't want to. I really don't want to. I love it here. If I could just put this house on the ground somewhere with a bit of a garden, I'd be a pig in mud. But yeah, I think the uncertainty, because I don't even know if I'm going to be able to stay in this area. I've got a really strong feeling I won't be able to because of house prices, unless they come down quite a bit more. But then that would mean mine would come down more. So the fact is, I don't know where I'm going to end up. And because I've been doing a lot of this thinking about that previous life, and I'm now trying to project forward, I'm trying to imagine my life once I've moved and got settled. Part of my problem is I have such an active imagination, internal life, as it were. I can sort of see exactly what I want. I could imagine exactly where I want to be. But realistically, I don't think what I'm imagining, what I'm projecting, I don't think that can happen, purely down to money, which is really boring, isn't it? It's really boring. But yeah, and I'm not talking mansions, but to live near the sea, for instance, to live in my grandparents' old village, that sort of thing, priced out. Anyway, yeah, tossing and turning, and I want to look forward, but at the moment I've been doing a lot of looking back. And one doesn't want to live with regrets in life. There's no point, because we can't go back, we can't change the past. But I can't help at the moment reflecting on and thinking, wow, if I hadn't gone into nursing, I'd still be, in my bookshop. I'd be running my own bookshop, and all those amazing customers, that fascinating collection of people who challenged me, my two beautiful, wonderful colleagues who challenged me intellectually every day. They really kept me on my toes. Yeah, I miss that, and I think I need, so when Sarah's asking, do I miss going to the pictures, do I miss concerts and all that? No, I don't miss any of that, but what I miss is that, I think, artistic, creative, scholastic, intellectual community that I was part of, that challenged me and kept me on my toes. So yeah, now there is one thing that I do miss, I definitely miss, and that is the good old British custom of going to the pub on a Friday night with your mates, or any night, or any afternoon. But the pub as a meeting place to just sit and chew the fat with your mates and, put the world to rights. I really miss that. It's expensive to go to the pub. Last year, in 2022, I went to the pub on a really beautiful day, right at the beginning of May. It might have been the May bank holiday, I'm not sure. But it was an impromptu thing. A friend called and said, it was about 4 p.m, did I fancy a pint? And I said, heck yes. So we met up and had a few pints. He was paying, which was great. I wanted to, and I kept saying, let me get the next, no. It's like, okay. Whilst there, other friends turned up and had a caught up, and it was lovely. But it was like one pub visit in the year is hardly enough to keep a girl going, is it? But I've been to the pub again, or should I say this year. It was unplanned, completely random. Just a couple of pints because I was in the bookshop. Of course I was in the bookshop. Not any of the charity shops, the bookshop. It's a lovely little bookshop. At the front of the shop, it's all the new stuff. And in the back, they do second-hand and out-of-print things. And I'd gone there specifically. I'm on the hunt for 2 specific books. For friends, for gifts. I'm not in a hurry to find them. I could probably go online and find them on the computer, but that takes the joy out of it, doesn't it? So I was in the back of the shop nosying for these 2 out of print books, and I heard a voice at the front of the shop that I know, so I came waddling through the shop and I said, I'm going to call her Diana, just for her anonymity. So I said, oh, hey, Diana. And she started to turn around, it's a friend of mine. And I started to say, Happy New Year. And as she turned around, I said, Happy New, oh God, what's wrong? I could tell her face, she just looked really stressed. So I came up to the counter and I sort of grabbed her arm and I said, what's the matter? Her eyes filled up. I was like, oh my goodness, she's going to cry. She's going to go. So we're at the counter and she was finishing her business. And I said to the guys, I said, look, I'm going to come back another day because I think I want to do a search with you where I pay them to look, essentially. It's only like a couple of quid or whatever, but they make the money. Anyway, doesn't matter. So we kind of came into the front sort of door of the shop. I said, oh my goodness, what's wrong? And she said, have you got a few minutes? It's like, of course I have. Oh, where should we go? And we're opposite the pub. So I said, should we go to the pub? It's about 3 PM, so it's going to be pretty empty. Yeah. Anyway, so we went to the pub, and initially, it wasn't like, yay, partying in the pub, because she had a problem. And we talked about it, and we talked it through. And actually, before even the first pint had gone down, she was laughing again, and it was great. So yeah, I had a couple of pints in the pub, and I thought, because I've still got that whole 2009, the Murakami book, I got that in the back of my mind, and I was thinking, this is what I used to do. This is how I used to be, hanging out in bookshops and having time for friends and having time for a pint. And anyway, I came home and I was smiling. I mean, my mind is still on her and her problem because it's not resolved. I need to catch up with her actually, but it's lovely. A pint at the pub. Well, it was 2 pints. Also, I've been banging on about, I miss running. It isn't just running per se. I miss my old body. I miss my body that was fit and strong and healthy. I want to move. That's the thing. I want to move, and I want to move with ease and grace, as once I did. So, there's no way I'm going to go out and go running. Can't. I can't even go walking in terms of walking for fitness. 5 minutes into a walk, I'm like, I've got to stop. But what I have been doing a bit of, it's a disaster at the moment. It is the most ugly, lumpy disaster at the moment, but I will get there. I will get back to it. I've started my yoga practice again because I used to, in the pre-Murakami book days, I did yoga every day. I did yoga every day and I ran every day and I walked to work, and it was a half-hour walk each way, brisk pace. So yeah, I've started doing yoga again, and like I said, it's so awkward and ugly and lumpy. And there's one pose, there's one of the asanas, it's like one of the most simple ones, and I couldn't bend my knees enough to do it. So my promise to myself is, stick with it, keep going. And if by the end of 2023 I can do this one particular asana, I will think this year's been worth it. I was really shocked actually. Really shocked at how huge loss in flexibility. I used to be able to, it was my party trick, as long as I wasn't wearing a dress. If I was wearing a dress, I wouldn't do this as a party trick. But I used to be able to get each leg and put it behind my head. So each leg crossed over behind my head, there's my feet. and then with my arms through, lean my weight forward onto my arms, you can't see, can you, onto my arms and hands, and then walk on my hands with my legs behind my head. That was a good party trick. No, no, I mean, I don't even think I could get lifting one of my legs, I don't think I could get it as high as my chest. But you know what? It ain't where you start, it's where you finish. What's that song? It truly isn't. It's not about where I'm at today. It's about where I want to take myself in the future. I want to take myself sort of back in time, but in the future. Oy vey, oy vey. Anyway, so yeah, goodness me, a lot of going on. And look, I think, like I said, I think underlying all of this is that trepidation about moving this year, because it's hard to picture yourself in your own future when you don't know where your future is. Something as basic as, I don't know where I'm going to be living. I don't even know what town I will be living in, and that's why it's so harum-scarum. In terms of house hunting, I'm not starting yet because there's still all that stuff to do in the flat that I was talking about. Goodness knows when. I have to now start forcing myself to do things. But I will be looking outside of London. I was going to say not out of choice. Oh gosh, all the thoughts that have been going on the last 2 weeks. Part of me thinks I do not want to leave this area because this is where I know people, I feel part of a community. But on the other hand, there's another part of me, I'm really restless at the moment as well. There is a restlessness in me. And I just think, oh, blow it, shove it. I'm just going to go and I'm just going to start again somewhere else. But I don't think that's a really good attitude for me to have, because I think that's more of a running away thing. Anyway, yeah, so no news on house hunting, and as soon as there is, if there's anything to say, you know I'll say it, because I am the chatty girl. Anyway, talking of which, that relates to one of the books. I've got 3 books I'm going to share with you today. I'll rattle through them. I'll try to rattle through them. So, without further ado, excuse me. Without further ado, the first one is Claxton by Mark Cocker. Claxton is a village in, I think it's just inside Norfolk. He does reference Cambridge. It might be right on the border with Norfolk and Cambridge, I'm not sure. And Mark Cocker is a journalist, and he writes, he writes weekly column for, I think it's The Guardian. Oh, it doesn't say here. It does say somewhere in the introduction. I'm mentioning that because of the layout of the book. So I read this one following on from Meadowland, which, as you know, I loved it. It's my joint book of the year for 2022. And there are many similarities. And because of the similarities, it might have thrown me a bit reading it, because actually there are big differences too. So let's talk about the similarities first. It's laid out in terms of diary entries going from January to December. It's observations on a rural area, but in a way that's where the similarities end, because it's not linear as the John Stemple, whatever his name, as Meadowland, because Meadowland is just 1 year. So although this is laid out January to December, the pieces, it's a collection of all his different pieces from 10 years. So you might look at January the 4th, but it'll be January the 4th, 2003, and January the 7th will be 2010. So it doesn't have that, it's not a sense of this is one place, you know, one day after another day after another day. Also, it's rather than with Meadowland, just put that down a second, just holding it up like selling it. It is in the shop, my shop. rather than the meadowland is a very small focus, it is his meadow. There's little references to slightly outside of it, the field next door or whatever, but it's a very narrow focus of this particular meadow over the course of a year. Whereas this is much wider ranging. It's the countryside around the village. There's a couple of times when he goes away for a week and he writes from wherever he's gone away to. So again, that makes it different. We're not focusing on the same thing every day and charting those minute changes over the course of a year. There's definitely a sense of the seasons. So even though there isn't that narrow focus, we definitely know we're in winter. We definitely know we're in summer. And the other big difference, and I couldn't put my finger on it at first, well, I kind of did. His focus is very ornithological. So the vast majority of his observations are to do with the birds. There are some to do with the landscape, the mammals. There's some otter bits throughout. I love hearing about the otters. But generally, it's very much about the birds. So, is it fair to compare the two because of those similarities? Okay, I'm not going to compare the two. I am. In a minute. Let's have this one on its own. How did I enjoy it? I thoroughly enjoyed it. Tore through it in no time. Really enjoyed it. However, I'm going to say that I liked it rather than I loved it. Meadowland, I loved. Claxton, I liked it a lot. And having read it and then, put it down for a few days to think about it a little bit more, because books, they do kind of rumble around for a while, don't they, once you've finished reading. And I realised what it was that, I've come to realise, I think what I love when I'm reading natural history type books is, I think I'm more interested in, the human interaction with that, either the wildlife, the countryside, whatever it is, the human in that place, or, I particularly farming, I'm really I think I'm really more interested in things that grow rather than things that fly. I mean, I love birds, of course I do, and I love the bird song when I'm in the garden. It's wonderful to hear. Actually, as I was reading it, I was thinking, I had this once and I sold it in the shop, a DVD of bird songs so I can identify the different birds by their song. I know some of them. A blackbird is so distinct, robin distinct. But yeah, I liked it, but I didn't love it. I think what I really enjoy when I'm reading is it's more to do with, growing things, farming, but farming with that mind on the environment and the ecology, that microecology in one field, for instance. Loved it. Loved Meadowland, liked Claxton. I think if you were more into birds than me, I think you'd love it. Okay, come on, Vivi, chop chop. Next we have A Honey Bee Heart Has 5 Openings by Helen Jukes. Is it Jukes? Yeah. Jukes with a J rather than Dukes with a D. A Year of Keeping Bees. Oh, I really enjoyed this one. I really enjoyed it. I think it's at the top end of like. Didn't quite make it into love, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. So the basic premise, I think she's got itchy feet too. I think she's someone who's been unsettled and perhaps doesn't know exactly what she wants from life. I think has closed herself off to people, relationships, whatever. There is a little bit of a thread through it underneath all of how it changes her as a person. But she decides, I want to have a beehive. She has done some, she's moved from London, she's moved to, I forget where she's gone now, Oxford. But whilst in London, she has followed a beekeeper around all over the city, learning about beekeeping from him. And when she lands in Oxford, she decides, yeah, I'd like to keep my own, and then becomes terrified at the prospect But she does it. She gets her own little colony of bees going. So it's a very, very simple premise. She gets the bees, how do they do? But like I said, there's that thread underneath the whole thing about what's that going to do for her. Because there's a sort of definitely a feeling, and I'm sure, you know, more and more of us are experiencing it and talking about it. This idea of, you know, we've all been, it's like worker bees. We're in these jobs that we don't like, that are stressful. We're commuting to these jobs that we don't like, that are stressful. Surely there has to be more to life than this kind of thing. So for her, she sticks with the job. She has to. She's got to pay her bills. But she needs something to bring a little bit of balance back, to basically something that brings her joy and that opens her heart up again. So yeah, a thoroughly enjoyable read. I do recommend it. I'm going to put that one in my shop too. And then finally Esther. Finally with a capital F, because, oh my goodness, I ought to have read this book about, I think, 45 years ago. I didn't have it when I was 45. 45 years ago. But a friend of mine, a Canadian friend of mine, loves it. And she's like, I can't believe you haven't read it. You must read it. So I had a book token. I've had it on the shelf a while. It was a book token. It's one of the book tokens I spent when I had my little day in London that I videoed a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. So I used my book token to buy this book, and I'm so jolly glad I did, because I bought with it Anne of Green Gables. Oh my goodness, how long? So I'm willing to bet that the vast majority of you have already read it, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Yes, I read a children's book. Oh, what a delight. So, also bearing in mind, I read this during this period when I've been all like, oh, what do I want? Who am I? Where am I going? I want to be Vivi from the 2000s. All that. There were so I identified with Anne. Anne the chatterbox with the highfalutin ideas and this big imagination. And you know what? There was a poignancy to reading it as an adult too, that I couldn't help reflecting on, and I still get it now. I was going to say when I was a kid, but I still do get it now, that thing of continually being told to be quiet, continually being told to, you know, sit down, sit still, be quiet, stop being a chatterbox, stop it with your silly ideas, stop being silly. And it makes me a bit sad, actually, because I think, you know, there's a time and place, of course. But with kids, you know, look, if kids are running around screaming in a restaurant, chucking mashed potato at people, yeah, they do need to sit down and be quiet. But in general, you know, if you're skipping along the road on your way to school and you're making up fantastical stories, how great. Why would we say to kids, be quiet, walk nicely, walk properly? Squashing these little lights out. Yeah, so that kind of made me sort of a little bit sad for the younger me, that I was continually being told to shut up. I don't mean just like at home, I mean like everywhere. Teachers, everything. There's that lovely bit where she's reading Ben-Hur in her lunch break, and the bell rings to come back into class, and she's just getting to the exciting bit of the chariot race. So she carries on reading under the desk. I did that all the time. And she's saying that moment when the teacher catches her and she's mortified. Please don't tell anyone. Please don't get me into trouble. And I was straight back to school. I was in Mr. B's class, so I would have been 8. And that was the first time I was caught reading under the desk. And I was told off, had my book taken from me, given back at, I can't remember if it's like lunchtime or home time. But yes, I was told off. I was mortified by that. It didn't stop me though. It's like so much of my school life was me reading a book under the desk. Because, you know what my excuse for this is, and I don't mean this in a swatty way, but especially with, say, something like maths, if we had a 1 hour lesson and we were set some work, I'd finish it in 20 minutes. I just found maths easy and I loved it. So I'd be finished in 20 minutes, I'd be bored. So I'd start chatting and then I'd be told off for talking. So let me read under the table then. Either give me some more work or let me read, but don't expect me to sit in a maths lesson for half an hour, having finished my work, doing nothing, just staring into space. Can't do it. Didn't do it. At one point, I believe, because I did get into trouble with it when I was in high school, I believe my mum spoke to one of the teachers at Parents' Evening and just said, you know what, set her more work, give her double the work. That'll keep her quiet. So I loved it. Anne of Green Gables, how has it taken me all these years? I would have loved this when I was 10. I would have absolutely romped through it. This would have been the book under the desk that got me into trouble. So how great to read it as a grown-up and not get into trouble for it. Yay! I know. Bit late to the party, eh? Better late than never. So it did make me think, actually, because obviously I'm thinking about moving. I've already cleared a load of my books out. I did it as part of my big declutter in November. It was either November, December 2021. And subsequently, so it reduced things massively because I don't just have books here, I have them in other places too. But they're now all here. This is every single book in my life, including this is all shop stock. This isn't, and that bit there. You look how the gaps are opening. So with a mind to moving, I have been I'm either reading it and passing it on to a friend, or reading it and putting it back into the charity shop, or reading it, and if I think it's something that you may be interested in, it's going to the shop. So I am whittling them down. There's a lot that are not to be whittled yet. They need to be sold properly through specialists, because they're specialist books, you know, like a lot of the mountaineering stuff and exploration. They're first editions. They need to be sold via a shop that specialises in that. But what I am now starting to do is, there's a little tranche of them, you'll all remember the covers, is some more of my childhood books. So My Friend Flicker, Green Grass of Wyoming, the Silver Brumby books, I've got more of them, different covers, Silver Brumby, Silver Brumbies. I think it's time for me to let these go. Let another kid enjoy them. So yeah, letting things go is a good thing. But what I'm not going to get rid of, I've just pulled these two off the shelf for now, are my, there we go, Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe series, because these are prize books. These are prize books. One is for, this is the hilarious thing, this is from Sunday school, where I also used to get told to be quiet. So this is from when I was 9. I've got attendance prize. I came second in attendance. Why did I miss a session? If I was 9 or 10. I was going to say, was I having my tonsils out? I wasn't. I had my tonsils out when I was 6. Well, I missed a session. Never mind. But this one, this makes me laugh. I won this prize I won the prayer writing competition. Me writing a prayer. So you could say that already I am a prize-winning writer. Yes! Anyway, yeah, so I'm going to keep my Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe books. And I've also got my Winnie the Pooh and House at Pooh Corner. They're not going anywhere either. Will I reread them? No. But I think when they're things like prize books, you know, I mean, I don't have kids, but, you know, if my nephew at some point has kids, maybe it will be a nice thing for me to pass on to them, because if my nephew has kids, I will be to them what Great Auntie Teapot was to me. So they might like them. Anyway, yeah, right, blimmin' heck. I think I've talked for long enough, haven't I? So, yeah, that's quite an eclectic, kind of all round the houses chaotic conversation, isn't it? It all makes sense to me. It all makes sense that, of course, I'm coming up for a big change in life again, moving. And that is bound to bring up all sorts of other stuff and memories of other changes and other moments in time where there was a big upheaval. I think it's natural, and I think it's probably, I think one doesn't want to stay in one's head too much, but I think it's probably not only natural but good that all these thoughts are coming up and coming out, because by letting them all be at the surface, I can then sort of pick and choose and say, okay, that's useful, I'll keep that, I'll use that, or that's not useful, let's put that just back into the memory bank and leave it in the memory bank. All right, lovelies. Yes, always good to have a catch up. I think there'll be another one quite soon. Like I said, you know, at the moment, it's foul. It's just rain every day. And yeah, so it's going to be more chat than doing at the moment. But I'm okay with that. I hope you will be too. And if you're not, just skip. Wait for the next video. All right, lovelies, until the next one, please look after yourselves, take care, happy reading. And the thing about reading as well is, wow, what it does to your imagination as well, and dreams. And that's been a lovely thing about, I've been doing quite a lot of reading. So not only have I been to the pub, reinstated my yoga practice, sort of, but also just immersing myself in the thrill of reading again. It's good stuff. Right. Stop talking, chatterbox. That was on every single report. Vivi is such a chatterbox. If she would only stop talking. Blah, 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 blah. All right, until the next one. Cheerio.